So let's talk about solving by factoring. So when we want to solve a quadratic again, so we've got x squared minus 3x. Now, tell you what, here's a good test of your understanding. If I want a quadratic that does factorise, that starts with x squared minus 3x, if I come up with this off the top of my head, I have to be able to decide the final number that I could write for you so that you could factorise. Could anyone tell me a number that would work? Go on.
4.
Plus, minus, what?
Plus.
Plus 4.
Wait, minus 4.
Minus 4? Plus 4?
Plus 4 would work.
Plus 4 would work, would it?
Minus 4 would work too.
And I want equals 0. Well, let's just check. So if I gave you that as an example and asked you to solve it by factorising, solve it with factors. So we would be looking at that, okay? The first bit would be,
it would be minus 4.
x and x, and we would need two things that multiply to make 4, add together to make minus 3. Is that possible?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes, 1 and 4.
You do a negative. No, but you can only.
Okay, so we can't have positive 4, but we could have
A negative.
negative 4. Because then I would have 1 times 4, and because this is negative, the larger must be negative, yeah? So 1 times minus 4 gives me minus 4, minus 3, add them together gives me that. So that would give me x plus 1 and x,
Minus 4.
and that would equal 0. Alright, so the solutions are
X minus 1.
x equals minus 1 and x equals 4. Okay? Make sense? Right, can I just get you then to, in your neighbour's book, I want you to write them a question that will factor to solve. So swap books with someone next to you, and I just want you to write, make sure you know what it is, and I want you to write them one. If I were to ask you to solve this one, okay, there's one on the boards. Can I have everyone facing the boards? Right. So again, we're still trying to factorise to solve. Right. Go on then. First step.
What you do minus 5?
So we have to subtract 5 because that gives us what we need, which is plus 3x minus 5 equals 0. Does anyone else know? We've got Samara putting a hand up for doing the whole thing. So people without hands up don't know, yeah?
No, I do know.
You do. No, you've got your hand up. People without hands up don't know. Yeah. Go on in, tell us what we're doing next.
Then you need 2x squared. You do 2x. 2 times negative 5.
So we multiply this one,
This will give
so we
us-
get negative 10.
And then we find factors of negative 10. It could be negative 5 times 2 or negative 2 times 1.
Got those options.
So we'll use the 5 and 2.
Or 5 times negative 2. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Next person. Alec?
You say the negative, no wait. You take the negative 2 and 5,
So we take this one, yeah?
and then it will be 2x in the first bracket.
No, not yet.
What?
So what we're doing now, we're going to use this information, we've got to split the middle term first.
Oh, you put, never mind.
Well, stay focused now then, if Samira's going to tell us.
Would it be 2x bracket
Well, let's just write it out in full. Let's not try and solve it yet. Remember,
Oh, okay.
we're doing the splitting the middle term bit
Then
first.
it's plus 5, and then the split.
X.
Yeah, 5x, and then a split.
I'm going to put minus 2x because of the 5 and the minus 2.
And then a minus 5.
And then minus 5. And that equals 0. I split it down the middle. It's the splitting the middle term.
And then you do 2x. You don't.
Oh, it depends. I factorise each bit, yeah? So this would be...
2x. And then bracket.
No.
Oh.
It would be... What's the common factor there?
Oh, x.
Just x.
And then a 2. And then a 5.
Okay?
And then that one would be.
See, this one, if I've written it this way around, it's quite a tricky one, isn't it? No? Subtract 1 times...
Can you just leave the 1 out?
I could, but... Got, and then it's 2x plus 5, yeah? So I took a factor of minus 1 out. Now, as Jen said, we don't actually need the 1. But that's what we did. We took a factor of minus 1 out. Right? Now, it's nice to have the 1, because then, when we factorise a second time, we get...
X minus.
So 2x plus 5 is one factor, and then it's x minus 1. I'm not finished yet. Yeah?
Can you do like 2x plus 5 equals 0, and then x minus 1 equals 0, and then solve it and find the two different
Okay.
solutions?
So this one would be x equals 1. And
Negative.
Negative 5 over 2.
Okay, well.
Is it? No.
so we subtract the 5
Isn't it?
So Maya has this to be.
It is.
over 2.
Yeah.
It was just that I'd asked Samaya, and then suddenly this little voice peeps up from the other side of the room. Right, so I got negative 5 over 2. Alright? So I've got those solutions. So that's still factorising. Right. What about this next one? So the next one I'm going to give you is I want you to solve x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Think about it first. Try and do it first. Madison, yeah. Okay. Try and do it first before you put your hand up and tell me what to do.
In our books.
In your books, yeah. Give it a go.
Right?
Yeah.
The very, very quick solution or conclusion you should have come to is that this one doesn't factorise.
There's no solution.
Because what multiplies to make 3? 1 times 3, that's it. And it's either minus 1 times 3 or it's 1 times minus 3, that's it. So then neither of them add to make plus 4. So this one does not factorise. So
Oh, there's a different way.
what if it doesn't factorise? What if it doesn't factorise is the question that we now have to ask, because obviously everything we've done so far to solve is to factorise. But what if it doesn't? Because obviously there are ones that don't factorise. Well, we use the formula. Right. Now, I'm pretty sure that in Cambridge exam, you have to memorise the formula. Right? But I know for you guys doing the EdXL course, because you're now on the new EdXL course, you get the formula on a formula sheet. Right? So, the formula, I'm not going to give you this now. You've already seen it before, haven't you?
It's on every
Formula sheet.
Yeah.
Right? Down here is the formula. So you don't have to memorise it, which is great.
Guess it.
It's always great to not have to memorise it. Although, the downside to that is, those students that memorise it have to take a bit of time to memorise it, and therefore they understand it quite well. Alright? So, it wouldn't hurt you to memorise. Now, just to go through the formula, does anyone already know the formula without reading it? You memorised it without reading it.
Hold on, give me a minute.
I feel like my sister told me this one.
I feel like I can do it now.
Go on.
X equals.
So that's where we're saying the solution we want, x equals, we've done that before. Yeah?
I'm getting there. And then do a division side, so a fraction. Do a line. Yeah. And then do minus b, and then plus or minus, and then square root, and then 4x, I think.
It's b squared.
B squared, and then something AC.
Minus 4
I'm
AC.
getting there. You remember?
No, it's
She's looking at it.
No one's memorised.
I was so close to memorizing it though. I even got the 4 AC.
Okay. Right, so the formula is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay?
What is
If anyone's interested, in your textbook is where that comes from, doing factorisation.
that's plus or
So the
minus?
question is, where do the a, b's and c's come from? So it comes from the fact that... Go on.
I have one more question. Is
Go on.
that also known as like the PQ formula?
The PQ formula, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want to say no because I've never heard it, but...
Maybe not.
These come from the quadratic function is a x squared plus bx plus c, and we always have it when it equals 0.
Oh, Pythagoras.
No, that's
No.
not.
No, it's not. I see what you mean. A, B, and C. It's not. It's just we're using A, B, and C. Now, one thing to be very, very clear: A is the coefficient of x squared. B is always the coefficient of x, and C is the constant term in a quadratic. You can't, for instance, if I were to ask you to solve the one we were just looking at, x squared, what did I say? Minus
3.
4, was it plus 4x
No, it's
minus 3.
We don't have it
Yeah.
in this case.
A would be 1, B would be,
4.
and C would be
3.
minus 3. Okay?
What happens? You know how like in the formula it says minus b? Would you just change like?
But I'll go through it in a sec. I'll definitely go through and answer that. Just one thing, just so people don't make this mistake. If I were to rearrange this, for instance, if I just wrote, for whatever reason, 4x minus 3 plus x squared equals 0, let's say in my working or in the question I'm giving it's rearranged,
That's still A.
it's still A is what comes before the x squared, the coefficient of x squared. B is still 4, and C is still minus 3. Alright?
So C is by itself, P is with someone, and A is with
Yeah, so it doesn't always, you can't just look at a function and go it's A, B, C. Don't label it like that. Alright? You have to think very carefully. A is the coefficient of x squared. It's not just that A comes first, B comes next, C comes, you know? Alright.
It says an equal.
Oh, okay.
I don't like sorry.
Yeah.
So this does involve your use of surds actually. Right, so let's use the formula to solve this one. Alright?
But it
Now, my tip up to you if you follow it, but is to write out the A, B and C separately first. It's something where you can check. And then what I do in an exam as well is I tend to write out the formula so it's there in front of me, and I always go minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and what I do is I put a bracket around the 4ac.
I'm never.
Any
ideas why?
So that you don't do like b squared minus 4 by accident?
Maybe. It's got more to do with actually the fact that a times c times 4, well, especially in this case, could be a negative in its own right. Okay. So I put the formula and then I put the values in. So how do I write it? So I've got x equals minus b. Well, that would be minus whatever b is. So if b was a negative to start with, I'd be doing minus 4, for instance. It must be minus b. Whatever b is, you put a minus if that turns it positive, and so on. And then I've got plus and minus, and that's because of the square root. We've done that. And we do the square root of b squared is 4 squared. Now that's nice, because if it's a negative it doesn't matter because we square it. Then we've got subtract brackets 4 times 1 times negative 3 all over 2 times 1. Now again, my advice is always write it all out. Don't try and skip ahead and try and do bits in your head. Write it all out. The quadratic formula is very useful, but there is big potential for making little mistakes, especially with negative numbers. So I write it all out. I give me my best chance possible of identifying any potential mistakes.
So you say not to write like times though?
Oh, well, I have to when I've got numbers. If it's with algebra, so you notice how I haven't with 4ac, but when it's the numbers, I have to differentiate between 413 and yes, Alan.
So if it's plus or minus, which do you put in the calculator?
So we'll get there. Yeah, we'll get to that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it all in stages now. So I'm going to do it's x equals minus 4 plus and minus, and I'm going to do 16 minus and then in brackets minus 12. I'm keeping it very clear. All over 2. I'm doing it in stages. You might find a different route through. I'm then going to go for minus 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 12 is...
Wait, how come it's plus?
Because it's 16 subtract negative 12.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, see, this is where you've got to be very careful. Yeah. So 16 subtract negative 12. One common mistake is to forget about writing the divide by 2, and then it just suddenly disappears and your numbers are twice as big as they ought to be. So I'm going to divide by 2. Alright. Now, this is where my 2 solutions come from, because solution number 1 will be x equals minus 4 plus the square root of 28 over 2. And the second solution will be x equals minus 4 minus the square root of 28 over 2. Okay. So there's my 2 solutions. Now, it depends on what you're being asked for. You may be asked to give your solution to 2 decimal places. That's quite often the case. So what would be our solutions to 2 decimal places? That would be over to you and your calculator. You tell me. So, You needed to see the line. But.
Yeah. Really good.
So has anyone got the solution? Yeah.
0.65.
0.65. My tip would be as well, write it out to at least 3 decimal places and then round your answer. So what is it? Just to 3. 0.6.
0.0645.
Okay. Rounded to.
Oh wait. Oh, 4 cents.
Oh, I don't need it rounded. If I've got to round to 2 decimal places, I just write 3 without any rounding and then round it. It shows that I've done it correctly. What's the second solution? -1 minus. So give it to 3 first. Yeah, Jen?
Minus 4.646.
Don't round it. Just is it 645?
Oh, did you say 1 and 2?
Not it's 3 decimal places, but not rounded. 645. Because then I want to round it to 2, which would be minus 4.65. No? Do you see the symmetry in that?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's 4 and 0, but we've got the 0.65 and the 0.65. Quite often we get that. And when we talk about the shapes of the graphs, you'll understand why. What, however, so that's quite often the case. Give it to 2 decimal places. What if I said I want an exact solution? So I want exact solutions. So anyone, without telling me what the answer is, what does that mean I'm applying the skills of?
Simplifying.
But also simplifying. But what have I got in my equation? Surds. So if I want the exact solution to the quadratic formula, it could be done without a calculator. I can give it in surd form. Alright? So what would it be in surd form? So I've got -4 plus root 28. So well, you've got a test coming up on it. Plus, well, what does root 28?
Oh,
Yeah?
you do 4, like in this little thingy, and then you do times, 7.
4 times 7,
And then it's like you separate them.
which then becomes -4 plus,
4 squared, 2,
so 2 root
7,
7 over
2.
2. Is there anywhere else I could go with it?
Could you then do -2 plus?
Oh, so my second solution would be -4 minus the same thing, 4 times 7 over 2, so that'd be -4 minus 2 root 7 over 2. Is that what you were talking about?
No, I was talking about that one. Could you do it farther? Could you do -2?
Oh, yeah, go on.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing now. So it'd be -2
And then
plus.
plus root 7.
Yes, well done.
Would that be more simplified than the one above?
Yes, because I've divided through by 2. She's cancelled the 2, that -2, that 2 becomes a 1, cancelled. So we've done the divide by 2.
You wouldn't have gotten it right if you put that one.
You may have lost a mark for not giving it in the simplest form, yes. And this one would just be -2 minus root 7. Okay. So you've got 2 possible ways. Quite often it's to give it to 2 decimal places, because what they do is they think, well, we've already given you quite a challenge to use the quadratic formula. Anyway,
Does it
and
normally end in, does it
Go on.
normally end in -2? There's always going to be a -4.
not always, no.
Oh wait, that's not the 4, never mind.
Okay, so that's using the quadratic formula. Alright, that's using the quadratic formula. Now, just to say, the quadratic formula always works. as long as it can have a solution, and we'll talk about that. So as long as there are solutions to it equaling 0, it will work. Therefore, all the ones that you have factorised to solve could be the formula will work with them. So I've got a question for you. Why would you bother to sit there and try and factorise if you can use the formula?
Because sometimes it's faster.
Yeah. Faster, the quadratic formula can lead to mistakes with negatives, that kind of thing. There's always a chance of those problems. Often in an exam, well, you will know when you have to use the formula because they will say, give your answer to 2 decimal places. As soon as it says that, formula, going to use it. Quite often they force you down the factorise route because they'll say, part A, factorise this quadratic. Part B, hence or otherwise solve that quadratic equaling 0. Does that make sense? So you could factorise. I've seen people do this a lot when they don't fully understand. They do the factorise bit first, get it correct, and then for part B, instead of using the factorised form just to give their answers like that, they use the formula. And they do 4 marks worth of work for 2 marks, because normally the formula is worth 4 marks. Okay? So there's something to be considered. Factorise, solve. If it doesn't factorise, use the quadratic formula. Alright? Should I give you another one to do?
Yes.
Do you want to ask a question?
Yes. When it says exact formulas, do we have to say equals 0 or x equals?
Yeah, do you have to say x equals?
Oh, well, these would be x equals and x equals. Well, for those, it will normally in the question, the answer space have an x equals. Yeah. By the way, we could quite happily here write x equals minus 2 plus and minus root 7. That will do as well. Okay. So one more to have a go at then. So I would like you to solve 5x squared equals 4 minus 2x using the quadratic formula. So use the formula to solve 5x squared equals 4 minus 2x. Okay? If you want to write that down, and then if you need to fill any notes in, then I can put the other screen back up and then you won't need to see it. So write that down, and if you've got any notes you want, I can put it back on the screen. Okay, I'm recording. So let's go through it's great that I've seen the common mistakes happening, because that means you can learn from them. Right? Right. So I did see a couple of people make the first mistake of not rearranging. You have to, first of all, rearrange this to make it equal 0. So I can add 2x and I need to subtract 4. So I end up with 5x squared, add 2x, subtract 4, that equals 0. So I saw people didn't do that, and I saw people that rearranged incorrectly because they were moving things from side to side. Okay? So I've got it the way I want it now. So now I can say that A is 5, B is 2, and C is negative 4. Alright?
Maybe that's what it was wrong.
So you have to take the sign with the term. The sign is part of the term. Okay? So if I put it into the formula now, so I've got minus b plus or minus. Like I said, I do this. You choose if you want to or not. And then I say, right, minus b, so that's minus 2, plus and minus the square root of 2 squared minus, again, brackets, you choose if you don't, but people made the mistake, 4 times 5 times minus 4, all over 2 times is 10. So at this stage we've got minus 2 plus or minus the square root of, and it's 4 minus, and then we've got minus 80, right? So that's where several of you went wrong, because you had 4 minus 80. Now this is a point that we are going to talk about what happens if you actually do end up with a negative answer under in the surd. Right? We do need to talk about that. So, but let's carry on with this. Minus 2 plus or minus, well, that's the square root of 84 over 10. And then we end up with minus 2 plus or minus, well, root 84 is 4 times 21, which is root 4 times root 21, therefore 2 root 21. So I've got 2 root 21 over 10. You can divide the whole thing by 2, which gives me minus 1 plus or minus the square root of 21. Okay, so that would be the exact form, both solutions. If I then put that into my calculator, I should get x equals... Go on, sorry, hang on. Oh, sorry, yeah, over 5.
Would you mind spelling it up a little, sorry?
Wait. Let me see if I get the same.
What would be the 2 solutions then? Jen?
0.72 or minus.
What would it be to 3 first? 7 to...
7 to, I don't know.
2, 8.
7 to 1. Then I've got 0.72 is my answer to 2 decimal places. Or the other solution is...
Minus 1.1 to 1, it's 1,
Okay, so then it's minus 1 point... Was it?
Yeah, instead of 721, it's 0.
Yeah, I think it's 1,
1.6.
And then
But it doesn't matter, does it? The 6 doesn't round the 1 up, that then round... We only go to the 1 more I need. So this would be minus 1.12.
I think the answer was minus 1.116.
No, I was talking about the other one, that one. It's 0.167 instead of 0.2.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So that would be 1, 6. Okay. And this would be 1.121. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got our 2 answers. To talk things through. If all you want to do is just write the notes, I can go back to afterwards. But try and think about what we're saying at the time. Okay. So we've got this now. Is there any questions at any stage of any of that? Yes.
So I made mine a negative 10, and I think that's wrong.
So you have a minus 10 on the bottom.
I moved the 5x squared back in line so it becomes.
Oh, okay, right.
I got a negative.
Girls, everyone, a good point is being made. Now, obviously, at this stage, I could change the whole look of the problem. Instead of doing this version, I could have ended up as what? I could have done the 0 equals, and then it would be... No, it wouldn't. It'd be negative 5x squared, negative 2x, and plus 4. Now that would change. My A equals negative 5, B equals negative 2, but C equals positive 4. So I would still end up with the same answer. Right? I'd still end up with my same 2 solutions.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Next lesson, I'm doing this for the people that aren't here, that will listen to the video. Next lesson, I would like to move on from quadratic formula. So what I need from you is to have had a go at 1 or 2, right? What you can do is, well, obviously you can review this and finish your notes off, but if you have a look at, in that booklet I gave you yesterday, you can have a go at one of the questions they tell you is for the formula. Well, you can actually use any of them with the formula. Or if you go to page 428 in your textbook, there's more for you to have a go at. Okay?
I'll do it like a test tomorrow. I mean, the next one.
Okay.